Come on now. Okay, yes, it's on now.
Okay, that's good. So once again, you are welcome to the sixth class, if I'm right. Yeah, I think this is going to be our sixth class. Welcome to the sixth class, which is also, we are going to be looking through for the last four modules. This is sixth class, and we're going to be looking at revision for the last four modules. Victoria Robinson is supposed to be in charge of this module or of this class or today's session, but I just got a message from her that she has some technical challenge. So I will be standing in for her because I also handled one of the modules. The purpose of we having this particular class is we don't just want to rush through everything we have to cover. We need to go through some parts, take some steps backward and review. Take some step backward and review. Look at what we've learned. Look at how it relates and connects with each other. Because, like I said, I think in the model 3, that most of what we are going to be looking through together, they have a way of connecting with each other. And that's why you need to be aware of the model 1, content of model 1, model 2, model 3, model 4. We are at model 4 presently. So we are just going to take a review. So this sixth class is focused on review of module 1, module 2, module 3, and module 4. Then I would want to also advise that it's important to take note of this fact that the assignment that are given to us are all part of the learning process. I want to appreciate those who share their thoughts and what they think about the picture that was sent to the group page with respect to a cybersecurity concept, which I appreciated the fact that most persons actually understood what happens there. And the picture shows that humans are always the weakest link. You take note of all those technologies, the firewalls, the DDoS protection, the incident detection, incident prevention, all those gadgets. Just a user can throw everything inside the bush. Just carelessness from the side of a user. So it's important to take note that humans are always the weakest link. And that's why for the ones have been involved in, when people are coming up with looking at ways to improve their cybersecurity posture, that is, ways to improve cybersecurity posture of an organization, of an enterprise. If I don't see training and awareness there, that strategy is not complete. As simple and as basic as training is, it can be the single factor. It can be that silver lining that will make a difference in your cybersecurity architecture, your security architecture, training and development. Because it is the humans that are going to make use of the equipment, and it is the humans that are going to make the equipment to work. So that's why it's very important to take note. So once again, you are welcome, and we will quickly uh, take some brief review. We'll take some brief review. Let me do this. Okay. I will share. I will share the screen for module 1. We'll just quickly go through together so that in max 1 hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes will be done, because today is meant actually for review, then so that people can also ask questions. Excuse me, coming. I will share my screen in a moment. Okay. 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 Oh, did I close that entire screen? Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay. I think we started with fundamentals. Fundamentals was the first module that was handled by Victoria Robinson. And she did a very good work by putting us through some basic fundamentals of cybersecurity. And I would always say this at the beginning of every class, at the beginning of every module, and at the beginning of every boot camp that I am involved with. Always remember that during the class like this, or at the end of a class like this, that is when your learning starts. You should be familiar with that from me now. That's when your learning starts. Now, what we actually do in this part, what we will do in this session, and what we have actually been doing in every session is like putting up the architectural framework for your study. So look at every session, look at every module as we are presenting the architectural framework for your studies, like telling you, take note of this, go and read more about this, take note of this, pay very close attention to this. So we are providing an architectural framework for your cybersecurity education. That's why I said that your real study, your real learning starts after the class. What you do after the class. Because I've seen quite a number of persons that they have this very deep interest to learn cybersecurity or to engage in any of the tech fields or in any of the tech pathway, but they don't really have the understanding of what it takes to learn. They feel that all that they need to learn is to just come to a boot camp, or all that they need to learn is just attend a class of one professional, and overnight they'll become a cybersecurity professional. What makes a cybersecurity professional is what you do with the information that are provided for you in this particular session. And that's why I emphasize the fact that what we are doing for you at the moment is just giving you an architectural framework of your cybersecurity education. And please, you don't just hold framework and stay on there. You get framework and you build on it to be able to make anything substantial out of it. So, like I said, we'll just quickly do a review. For the module one, we looked at the cybersecurity fundamentals, and Victoria was able to take us through quite a number of things. We looked at introduction to cybersecurity. We looked at importance of security in the modern world. She took us through overview of cyber threats and attack. Okay, overview of cyber threats and attack. Then she also took us through a SWOT key terminologies, like when you do SWOT analysis for cybersecurity, what are the she took us through threats, vulnerability, risk, exploit, malware, etc. And you attended this session, you take note that there is an overlap and there seems to be some repetition, because when you talk about cybersecurity, there are some phrases, there are some concepts you must always refer to. You can't talk about them enough. You must always refer to them. Then she took us through the history and evolution of cyber threats, which then probably a few case studies. Okay, like I said, we're only going through, like she made us to realize that cybersecurity is a practice, is a technology, and is a process. It's very important to take note. Cybersecurity is both a practice, it's a group of technologies, and a process. Now, what is the aim of all these practice, the technologies, and the processes? The aim is protect computers, or maybe we say protect endpoints. So anywhere you see computers, you can put endpoints there. And because we are constantly going through a process of miniaturization, you have your computer in your hand like your smartphone. You sometimes some of your smartphone has better processing power than even your bigger computers. And remember, like I talked about, is the process of miniaturizations of technologies and devices. So this practice, these technologies and this process has one singular goal: to protect computers, to protect network. Now, remember, where network come into place is, I gave an analogy of a physical security of maybe your environment, your area, the not just streets now. maybe a conglomeration of streets. One of the things you expect from that security person is to understand the street network or the road network in that particular environment. So it's important to take note of these facts that you need to understand a little bit of network. Remember, that's one of the reasons I said something. I think in our third module and our fourth module, I emphasized the fact that there are some background knowledge you need to bring into cybersecurity. And one of those background knowledge is you must have the basic understanding of network. You don't have to be a network technician, you don't have to be a network engineer, just basic knowledge of network. You need to have the basic knowledge of network. Then programs, maybe like softwares, then data. You are preventing all this from malicious intents or the bad guys. You are preventing it from unauthorized access, attack, or damage. Most of the time, a lot of people think all that there is to cybersecurity is to prevent attack. In cybersecurity, we also prevent access because there are, I spoke in the fourth module, I spoke about the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and the Nigerian version, the NDPR. And the primary purpose of the GDPR is to ensure that data collected is only accessed by those who need them. You don't have an overexposure of data. So it's very important, apart from overexposure, unauthorized assets. And let me tell you this, the more you go higher in cybersecurity, the more you need to intentionally work by some principles, by some ethical principles. I remember those days, I used to work in a section of the university that I had access to student data. And some of these students, because we needed to still look into some other things, I would read them, oh, let me have your number. And some of them would say, sir, why you be asking for my number when you have access to it? I say, no, I can't access your number through the pathway you think I should because I am in charge of the data. That is, for me, is going to be unethical access. If I feel because I have the database, I just pick anybody's number and just call when it does not have to do with anything official. I had to reach out to the person that give me your number yourself. It is wrong for me to go into the database because I have access to extract your number out. I am not under any legal obligation, neither am I under any particular government, maybe organization, instruction to extract such information. I just want it for my own personal use. So I should meet you to give me. I should not go to extract it out. It could be as good as this, or it could be as very serious as this. So it's important to take note. The higher you go with respect to your skills and your exposures in cybersecurity, on purpose, because of my engagement, on purpose, there are some aspects of cybersecurity I decided not to acquire more skills about because of the environment I stay in. Now, I sometimes find myself in groups that we're together and we need to get access or password to a particular hotspot. And my friends be looking at me that, Marty, we know you can get. I said, no, I know I can get it, but it is going to be an abuse. It's going to be an abuse of skill, abuse of knowledge for me to get it. In fact, at that particular time, if I attempt to get it, I have become an unethical hacker, become a black hat. I needed to request, please, can I get the password to your hotspot? Even though I know I can get it, even though I know I can access it with the skills I have, but I choose not to. I make a request. Now, this is very important for you as a cybersecurity professional because there will be some knowledge and some skills you have that could be abused if you don't bring yourself under ethical guidance. Under ethical guidance, and it's important. You can't just say because you have these tools and you have these skills, you should just access any data or you should just access any network. As long as, even though you don't have any malicious intent, as long as it is an unauthorized access, then it is wrong. It is very, very wrong and it can be termed malicious. So it's just important to talk about that. I needed to lay some emphasis on unauthorized access because some persons feel that as long as you are not attacking, you you are not stealing anything, you just use the access for your own benefit. As long as it is an unauthorized access, it is an unethical practice. And that's why, even in cybersecurity, part of our activity is to prevent unauthorized access. Is to prevent unauthorized access. So it's very important to take note. What's happening, Michael? I'm seeing in the group that some persons are not able to come in. Probably you help to look at that on the background. Thank you. Okay, so it's important to take note of that, that you protect endpoints. Remember, computers are part example of your endpoints. Your endpoints include your computers, your phone, anything that connects to the network. It can be the public network or private network. That's why you need to study about network, because when you look at network, we have the public network, we have the private network. Very important to take note. But as a cybersecurity professional, you pay attention to both. You pay attention to both. Then we were made to understand, Victoria made us to understand that the goal of cybersecurity is to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. That's when I think later she now told us about the CIA triad. If you don't know anything about cybersecurity, please know this, that the primary goal of cybersecurity is to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. And if you want to take it into a fine grain, we can also talk about critical infrastructures that are needed for the operation of a business. We ensure that the confidentiality is maintained, integrity is maintained, and availability is maintained. And we were made to understand importance of cybersecurity in the modern world. It's important to take note that we all are always developing digital footprints. You know, you're always developing digital footprints. What you come to do online is a digital footprint. You open an account today, you have developed a digital footprint. Either you like it or your data is out there. And one of the things we do as cybersecurity professional, we help to ensure that these data are protected. These data are protected from malicious actors or malicious intents. Then we looked at other importance of cybersecurity in the modern world. She talked about data breach. One of the things you should put your mind that you'll be doing as a cybersecurity professional is to prevent data breach, either by using technology or by using education or by working directly with administrative administrative tools. When I say administrative tools, example is like training and developing policies. Then we have also, it helps to prevent financial loss. I think most people are more concerned about this because you know that once there's a cyber attack, it can go away. I can't remember the exact name. There was a cyber attack on an organization that thousands of credit card details were stolen. Thousands of credit card details were stolen. And you know what that means? Thousands of credit card details were stolen. I was sharing with someone although I don't really run much funds around it, but in recent time, what has saved my CUDA account, I don't know, maybe any other person experienced that. What has saved my CUDA account was the MFA, multi-factor authentication. You know, remember we're still going to look into that you have to protect your critical infrastructure. You as a cybersecurity, you have to use what is called the security in-depth. You have to use the security in-depth in which there are layers of security with respect to your critical infrastructures or your data or your resources that you're trying to protect. Then also you should realize that even as a cybersecurity professional, you could be required to also help protect intellectual properties. And there are different ways that can be done. You can look into encryption. You can look into proper backup, should in case a part is taken away. Then national security concern. Now it's very important. Governments of the world today, they are paying very good attention to cybersecurity. And let me mention this. Countries now, part of their military includes cyber army. Iran, they don't hide it. They have a cyber army. Iran has a cyber army. Now, other countries like the US, they have a cyber army, but they are not going to announce it. So that once it comes to cyber warfare, it is the cyber army that fights the cyber warfare. But that's not the direction that we are going today. The direction we are going is governments need cyber security for national attack that, okay, there was an attack that Israel launched against Iran without setting their foot on Iranian soil. And they also launched the attack without shooting a gun. It was a cyber attack. It was a cyber attack against their, what's it called? It was a cyber attack against their nuclear plant. The nuclear plant just shut down. It just shut down. Probably when I think I have the video, I would either share the video on the group or send the link to us. So, of cybersecurity, or multiple approach or application of cybersecurity. And that's one of the reasons I do tell people that cybersecurity is a field that has application in all areas. If you want to pay attention to awesome security, cybersecurity has application in all areas. Okay, we need to move fast. We were shown common threats, which we talked about in the third, is it the third year? In the third module. So I will just go over this. Now, she made us understand some basic terminologies, and it's important to take notes. Threats, you should be able to differentiate between threat, vulnerability, and risk. You should be able to differentiate between threat, vulnerability, and risk. Threats is circumstance or event with the potential to cause harm. Example can be natural disaster, human error, malicious attack. It has, because there's an attack, it may not go through, but an attack may eventually go through. Then, with the threats, we also have vulnerability. Vulnerability has to do with weakness in a system. Weakness in a system that threats could take advantage of. Threats could take advantage of vulnerabilities. And that's why when threats meet vulnerability, then it could become a successful cyber attack. When a malicious attack meets a vulnerable system, it becomes a successful attack. Otherwise, with threats all alone, it might not just be a successful attack. Remember, vulnerability is weakness in the system design. Example of vulnerability could be outdated software. That could be a vulnerability. Let's take note of that. Outdated software could be a vulnerability. Please take note. After this revision, you'll be writing a test tomorrow, and it's going to be a MCQ, multiple choice question, but you'd have a time frame to answer the question. Okay, it's important to take note of that. Yep. Then risk is the potential for loss or damage when threats exploit a vulnerability. Risk is the potential for damage when threat exploits a vulnerability, and it's function of likelihood of a threat. It is a function of the likelihood of a threat and the potential impact. So please take note. For us to have a successful cyber attack, a threat must see vulnerability. Example of vulnerability, like I said, is outdated system. Example of vulnerability can be an open port. That's why I said, please learn the basics of cybersecurity. When I say an open port has to do with basics of networking, rather. I say the basics of cybersecurity, basics of networking. An open port in a network is a very big vulnerability. So that's why some questions will tell you that as a cybersecurity professional, an organization calls you in to be able to do either a cybersecurity audit or to check their security postures. And on checking their network design or checking their network, you discover that there are some open ports. What do you do to reduce the vulnerability? It's important to just take notes. There should be no open ports. All ports should be used. Once any port is not used in your network design, just close the ports. Very important to take note. Then she told us about malware, but remember later we talked about malware, so let's just jump. Then told us about exploits. Exploit is a piece of data, could be a piece of data, or chunk of data, or sequence of command that takes advantage of a vulnerability. Taking advantage of a vulnerability, that's just exploit. So in cybersecurity, when we say exploit, it means the person is taking, or the bad actor is taking advantage of a vulnerability in the system. Then talked about firewalls. Yeah, they could be device, they could be software, they could be device, they could be software that's determine which network goes in and which traffic goes in and which traffic goes out from a particular network. So firewalls can be at the edge of the network. It can also be on your device. So firewalls can be on the edge of the network, on the perimeter of the network. Firewalls can be like gates. So there could be a gate, and that's why in some buildings there are multiple gates. So there is a gate on the network itself. There's a firewall on the network. Then there's a firewall on your device too. There could be a firewall on your device. It's important. Then password policy. When we're talking about vulnerability, weak password can be example of a vulnerability. Like saying password 1234 is a very weak password. And organizations today are instituting password policies in their system that if your password is not strong enough, it will not allow you to save it and use it as a password. I don't know, maybe you've tried signing up for something and you discover that they were not accepting your password because they say it's weak. It means that they have a password policy in place that determines the kind of password to use. And remember, talk about zero trust. Zero trust is a very, very critical cybersecurity principle and is a model also that indicates that you don't trust anyone, whether inside or outside the network. You verify. You don't automatically trust. You verify. Verify explicitly. You verify explicitly. You don't just automatically trust everyone. Verify explicitly. Okay. Then, sorry. Then she took us through attack vectors. Attack vectors are pathways for attack. Attack vectors are pathway or method in which attack can take place. So it means attack can take place through email, through the browser, or through network. Attack can take place all through those. So it's important to take note of that. Then, okay. Okay. She took us through some historical perspective with respect to evolution of cybersecurity threats. And I will not draw so much on that because we still have a lot to quickly just cover together, especially for the sake of those who were not available. I will seek a permission to see if we can have this particular slide available to everybody so that you can go back to sit on it. Remember, every training we are carrying out and everything we are taking you through, they are framework for your learning. And you need to build a very robust learning system around this framework. Okay. Now, she also gave us some examples of major cyber incidents that takes place. I will share some videos too with us after now, but just take note of this. I just want to take us through the principles. Okay. Okay, then we will look at the, okay, I want to be sure. We'll look at the second episode, the second module, which is cybersecurity principles. She also took us through cybersecurity principles, but let me hold on. Would anybody want to ask any question concerning the fundamentals that she took us through? Anybody want to ask a question or you want to add something? Anybody? Let me see if we are talking. Okay, anybody or you want to? Hello? Hello? Hello, Williams, are you talking? Okay.
I'm sorry,
Probably
it
that
was a
was a
mistake.
Okay, it's all right. It's all right. Okay, let's go ahead and take a very brief review on core cybersecurity principles. Remember, like I said, at the end of every module, that's when your learning starts. This module is being presented as a learning framework for you. Okay, now there are some basic principles she took us through. Remember, we started taking a look at the CIA triad. I always say this: if you are a beginner in cybersecurity and you don't know anything at all, you must know CIA triad. CIA triad is a basic and foundational cybersecurity model and also principle. Okay, now the CIA triad is just a coinage for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Yeah. Now, these are the three parts or three elements that must be maintained in your cybersecurity endeavor or the security posture of your organization. You must ensure confidentiality of data. You must ensure confidentiality of information. You must ensure that it is only those who need an information that have access to it. And that's when you take advantage of the principle of least privilege. The principle of least privilege. You only have access to the information you need to work. You are not just having access to the entire database. So it's important to take note of that. Then we have integrity. Integrity is maintaining accuracy. Integrity has to do with making sure that the same model, the same package of data I sent from my hand is the same that gets to your hand. There is no alteration. Now, if the integrity of information in the banking sector is not maintained, you just notice that you take your app and you give instruction to transfer or to withdraw, let's say 10,000 naira. If the integrity of that information is not maintained, there could be an MITM, that is man in the middle attack. And what the man in the middle attack does is he gets information packets before it gets to the other person, alters it. And once he alters it, he already has access to some of your credentials. Probably he changed the 10,000 to 100,000 by adding an extra zero. He altered it. And at the end of the day, before the information gets to the person, there's always a system that has already released the exact amount that was stated in that information. He would just remove the 90,000 and send the original 10,000 to the person. Then there will be a fight. Mr. A will say, I sent you 10,000, but I noticed 100,000 left my account. And Mr. B will say, look at my account, I only saw 10,000. So what happened along the way? There had been a very sophisticated man in the middle attack, altered the data packets that was transferred from point A to point B, and as such, it has defeated the integrity element of the CIA trial. So that's why one of the things you do in cybersecurity is to maintain the integrity of information sent or information transfer. And that's one of the reasons why we need to pay very important attention to practice, to have a cyber safe environment and workplace. Then we have availability. One attack that takes place under availability mostly is DOS or DDoS. DDoS is one of the attacks that takes place is one of the major attacks under availability, or one of the major cyber attack that targets availability, because with DDoS or with DOS, your data, your information, or your web app is not made available. So let's pay attention to that. Remember, we talked about this privilege is to ensure that users only have the minimum level of access to data or to information that they need to perform their job. I always give this example of somebody working in an office, and the only assignment the person have in the office is to pay attention to birthdays of members of staff and send them happy birthday message. If the particular officer in charge of this responsibility begins to have access to bank details, home address, they have not practiced least privilege. Least privilege will be the name, date of birth, and maybe email or phone numbers to which to use to send happy birthday message. Because at the time such staff is having more access to information than it needs, then that organization is not practicing the principle of least privilege. AAA, this is very crucial. Authentication, authorization, and accounting. This is very, very crucial. AAA. This is a framework that is needed to manage IAM. Take note, IAM is Identity Access Management. Identity Access Management. Like I said, I got a lot of exposure to that with my cloud engineering and cloud computing activity. We in fact, you can't do well if you don't have a good IAM structure, or if you don't have a good IAM architecture. Now, this AAA framework has to do with three A's. The first A is authentication. verifying the identity. Are you who you say you are? Please take note of this. Part of, let me add a little complex, a little high level information to this. Part of authentication process sometimes, most of you may not know, is actually your IP address when accessing some device. It's part of your authentication process. You know, there are some network that would say that they would say, or there are some application or some website that would already have the instruction of don't grant access to any IP address coming from Nigeria. Now, that's why when you open some websites to receive information that it appears that you are from a country that is not open to these resources. They only got you, they did an auto authentication for you and you don't know. And from your IP address, they know that you are browsing from a country that they don't want to share their resources with. So that's very critical and very important. Although primarily authentication starts with the use of password, biometric, and even MFAs. That is when you want to now access resources within an organization that you've been registered for or registered with. So we have the password, we have the biometrics, and we have the multi-factor authentication. Those are ways in which you can be authenticated to show that you are the person you claim to be. That's critical. Then we have authorization. Now, after authentication, authorization takes place. Authorization is after you have access into the network or into the app, they now determine what resources or service do you have authorization to access. It's just like Victoria said when she was handling this. You might have access to enter a house, but you might not have access to enter the rooms in the house. You might not have authorization to enter the rooms in the house. You could be authenticated to enter the compound. However, the only access you have is the balcony. You could be authenticated to enter the sitting room, whereas the only access you have will just be in the sitting room. You may not be authorized to enter the kitchen. You may not be authorized to enter the dining. You may not be authorized to enter into those rooms. So it's important to be able to differentiate between authentication and authorization. Authentication verifies your identity. Authorization determines the resources you can access. That's very important. Now, accounting. This is what you do, let me say, on the back end as a cybersecurity professional. You have to do a lot of accounting, and accounting does not have to do with counting money, but it has to do with counting assets, counting and monitoring assets. Who logged in at this time? Who accessed these resources at this time? You know, it's a kind of tracking. You know, you track user activity and ensure accountability so that once there is a breach, we know that, oh, user B was the last person that logged in. Oh, there was a breach at 4:05 and user A logged into the system by 4:03. Then you know you can hold user A accountable. So it's very important to take notes. And accountability or accounting also do with taking note of login attempts and also resource usage. Okay, so that's the end for module 2. Then we went ahead to handle module 3. I think what was module 3? Let me confirm. I think module 3 we talked about risk. Yeah, we talked about risk for module 3. Okay, so let me share the screen. Risk. Okay. Yeah. So we talk about cyber attack mitigation and risk management for module 3. Yep. Let me expand this a little. Okay. Now for this, it's important we take notes. Oh, what's happening? Sorry, is the slide moving to the next screen? What do we have on the screen now?
The content.
Content.
Categories
Okay,
and examples of that.
Oh, that's perfect. So for this particular module, this module 3, for module 3, we handled We handled categories and example of cyber attacks. We looked at the basic framework of mitigation. We looked at risk management, that is identifying, analyzing, and responding to risk. And particularly, we paid attention to security by design, then an overview of cyber threats. Now, I will move very fast. We looked at some categories. We looked at malware, and we looked at different examples of cyber attacks under malware. Can be a virus attack, can be worms. Remember the difference between virus and worms. Virus are executable files, or they are attached to executable files. So until you take a step to click on that link, the virus would just remain inactive. However, for worms, you click or you don't click. Once it enters your network, it keeps propagating and carrying out its malicious activity. It's non-executable. It just keeps working. It does not need your action. Just keep working. Then remember I talked about Trojan. A Trojan sometimes disguised as legitimate software. They say you need this software to make the light of your phone to grow dim. And without knowing that you're actually downloading Trojan virus. And before you know, some things are gone on your device. So it's important to take note of that. Then we look at ransomware. From ransomware, you should be able to pick it that it has to do with paying ransom. That is, your files are encrypted and they wait for you to pay ransom before they decrypt it for you. We did not enter to details, but probably in a more advanced class, you would have discussion on what do I do when there's a ransomware attack? What do I do when there's a ransomware attack? And probably what I would do, probably our next class will be on Saturday. Before our next class, I could just share with us on our page, Like I said, I like to over deliver. I like to give to you more than what's required or more than what you need at the time, but still gauging that you could take it. So I think it's good to have an understanding of what to do in case of a ransomware attack. Then we have spyware. Sometimes, like I mentioned in this class, that spyware is not an end on itself, or is a means to an end. Spyware is a means to an end. There's a big attack coming when the spyware is in place. So it's important to take note. And the hardware is there. And I mentioned that one of the most delicate is the rootkit, because the rootkit gets access. It has an administrative level access to your device once there's a rootkit attack. And with that, you'll take over your entire device or your entire system. That's very critical. I I did not pay attention to this on time, and I don't know, maybe any other person has experienced it. And in a safe environment, I have practiced that too. That if you give me the permission, I could actually work on your system remotely. And it means you would give me an administrator level access. Yeah, even though there are malicious ways to go about it, then when you do that, it becomes very, very illegal. So that's why sometimes even at the time in my office, when they needed me to fix some things on the system and I could not physically come to the location, I just ask one or two questions, tell them what to do on their system. Then I take over the use of the system remotely and do everything that I need to do in my own location on their own system. But remember, like I said, it must be ethical. You must have the resources, you must have the permission of the owner of that system to carry out that activity. If you don't have that permission, you could go to jail. It's a jailable offense. And because you are going to be seen as an unethical hacker, as a bad actor. So it's important. And that's one of the reasons I said it, that for cybersecurity professional, the more you get better, the more you improve your skills, especially some of these technical skills, the more you need to get careful and the more you need to watch that you don't fall into the temptation of using your knowledge for malicious purpose. So it's important to take note. So I always, especially when I have a very large or larger group of young people that are learning cybersecurity, I always tell them, if your intention of learning cybersecurity is so that you can scam people, they will catch you. It's not for this class, but I can tell you that even as a cybersecurity professional, whatever you are doing online, it is still traceable. That's the accounting part. We can know the person that used a particular tool to enter a particular system. I know some persons, they try to mask the activity, but when e reach level wey some things, or I'm speaking pidgin already. When you get to the level where they need to find out, I tell you, they will find out. No matter how much you cover your track, they will find out. They will find out. So it's just very important to take note of the facts of this fact. Yep. Remember to protect against malware, use good antivirus software, update your device, and avoid opening attachment from unknown sources. Okay. Then we look at phishing. Look at phishing, and we made us realize that phishing is a social engineering attack. And we look at different type of phishing, which is very important to take note. Remember, the primary goal of phishing is to push you to release some very important information, especially the PII. Remember, we have the PI, the personal information, then we have the PII, personal identifiable information. The PII is the one that can be used to zero into you, but the PI can be used to zero into you. Because when you, like I gave an example, I don't know, let me pick a name in this group. I give an example that if, for instance, I call on, I just go to the radio station and just say Mojísọ́lá Olúwatumbi or Tunde Agbola. Do you know how many Tunde Agbola that will respond? So Tunde Agbola is a PI. That is a personal information. It cannot be used to specifically identify. Because if I go to what's the most popular television in Nigeria? If I go to what's it called now? It's not, what's this? Okay, if I go to Arise TV and I say Tunde Agbola, you have something to take. Reports at Obafemi Awolowo University by 8 p.m. I tell you by that 8 p.m. we are not going to have less than 20 Tunde Agbola. And they are confirmed Tunde Agbola, not that they want to carry out any malicious action. They are confirmed Tunde Agbola. So at the end of the day, it's important to take note that the thing that starts differentiating you is your PII, your personally identifiable information. Okay. Can you still see my screen? Somebody said they can't see my screen. Can you still see my screen? I'm just seeing this information, 846.
Yes, yes. Can see it.
Okay.
I can see it.
Okay. What can you see on the screen at the moment?
Phishing,
what do you have
sir.
displayed on the screen?
Phishing.
Phishing. Okay, that's very
Phishing.
That's very good.
Phishing. Yeah,
okay, that's very good. I'm just seeing the message. So it's important to take note that once I call Tunde Agbola is a PI. Anoluwapo Boboye is a PI. Mojísọ́lá Olúwatumbi is a PI. Ororogbe Priye is a PI. It cannot be used to pin down to a specific person. It's just a personal information. But by the time we start getting into PII, personally identifiable information or personal identifiable information, then there is problem. Then you can use that information to stream down on a particular person or a particular individual. So social engineering is actually targeted towards PII, releasing personal identifiable information, which could lead to financial loss and which could lead to people releasing more sensitive information. Okay. So we looked at various examples of phishing. We have the email phishing, that is through the email, deception through the email. We have spear phishing. It could be through email, but it's specifically directed at an individual. That's why it's called spear. Spear phishing is directed at an individual. Then we also have whaling. We have whaling or wishing. Whaling is a particular type of phishing that is directed to specific high-profile individual. Maybe the C-suite executive, the CEO, the CFO, C-suite executive directed at specific individual. Then we have smishing. Smishing is text message that is meant for malicious Okay. I think I was briefly down. Okay, sorry, I think I had a little network challenge and I think I'm back now. Okay, is my screen still visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
Okay, very good. So, like I said, there are some of these phishing attacks that could go simultaneously with other forms of attack, like the phishing, phishing. The phishing is a kind of phishing attack that could also be targeted at high network individuals, high profile individuals, maybe through call. So when a willing attack is taking place or a wishing attack is taking place, it can be through email and it can be through smishing, it can be through phishing. It's very important to take note of that. I believe we've already shared the material, so I should not really take more time on this. Then we have the DOS attack, denial of service attack. And I told you about the distributed denial of service, that sometimes your phone can be contributing or can be a zombie in a distributed denial of service attack, because you may not know your phone will be used to send multiple traffic to a particular web app or to a particular website. And that's why sometimes, like I gave an example, you want to access a site and you are just opening the site for the first time. Then you receive information that we are noticing there's a way to put it. I think we are noticing a lot of traffic from your device. Kindly confirm if you are the one, or kindly confirm if it's you, or kindly show that you are human, because they know that there are some level of traffic that is not humanly possible to achieve. So they want you to confirm if you are human. So that's important. Then we talk about the HTTP flood attack. Remember, all this denial of service attack, DOS attack is primarily focused on the availability element of the CIA triad. It's focused on the availability element of the CIA triad and the ping of death. When you do your basics of networking, they will teach you how to ping. They'll teach you how to ping a particular IP address to be able to be sure, or to be sure if you can access it. If, for instance, you want to be sure if your network is working or if there's no network, you are trying to get to go to a Google site. All you just need to do is to get the IP address of that Google site and ping it. Once you can have a successful pinging without losing any packets, you know that, okay, the connection is good. Connection is good. But for the attack for ping of death, ping would keep going on because an extra large, an abnormally large ICMP is sent. Please permit me to just talk about this. By the time you start learning the basics of your networking, you understand all these protocols, because there are different protocols you need to know about in networking. The IP is one of the protocols too. Internet protocols is one of the protocols. When you talk about your IP address, is one of the protocols. There's the TCP. It's one of the protocols that we use. So there are different protocols in networking, which is just good to learn. So the ping of death attack take advantage of this very large ICMP is sent, and it can deliver this to break the packet into two. Break the packet into two. One part goes, as the other part is coming, it leads to an echo. And that's why we have the ping of death. And that keeps going on until it takes over the whole bandwidth that legitimate users are supposed to use to access the resources. And we have this low risk attack too. This uses apparently automated tools to slow down connections. Then the social engineering attack takes advantage of the human psychology. Social engineering attack takes advantage of the human psychology to manipulate. Now, they look at greed, they look at pressure when you are pressurized to do something. Then they also take advantage of fear of missing out. Fear of missing out. They take advantage of fear of missing out. You see an information, they use social engineering attack, and you feel that I may not have this opportunity next time. Let me just try it. And before you know, you have become one of the statistics. Okay. So it's important to just take note of all those listed social engineering attacks. I'm not going to take time to go through them, except to have specific questions, because, like I said, it has been shared to the group page. It has been shared to the group page. Okay. Then we have the supply chain attack. Now, this is a third-party attack, and that's why in cybersecurity we don't only pay attention to the organization; we pay attention to the third-party organization that provides service for that organization. Because if the bad guys or threat actors can't get you directly, they work through your third party, knowing that you can't say no to your third party, so they work through your third party. Okay. Then remember zero-day attack. You should be able to define or explain zero-day attack. Zero-day attack happens when when the attacker launches the attack before the vulnerability is discovered. So that's why it's referred to as 0-day. Before the owners of the system discover the vulnerability, the bad actors have already launched the attack. That's called a 0-day attack. Okay, then I talked about insider threats, which is the most critical. And sometimes the part that people don't pay attention to. And remember, insider threats can be as a result of an intentionally malicious employee. There are some unintentional, which we call the negligent employee. They did not intend to harm the organization, but they were not just trained. Remember that user in which all the technologies were sitting at the edge and his hand was on the open tool or the open lever of the boot of the car. Just a little mistake, you open it like this. Oh, everybody, they get into the bush or they fall off the system. All the technologies are gone just with a negligent and untrained user. And remember, that's one of the reasons I said that it's not only when you want to get into the cybersecurity pathway as a professional before you learn cybersecurity, you also look into you learning it to improve your work. Then we talked about disgruntled employee. There is nothing as dangerous to an employee as disgruntled employees. And that's why standard world global first, let me call them five-star organization, they make sure that the employee are always happy. Because disgruntled employee, they are very, very serious cyber risk. So it's important to take note of them. Then look at former employees, contractor and third parties, family and friends of employees. There are sometimes some of you, your parents or your uncle or your auntie gives you the password for their network. That's part of it. So it's important we take note of that. Okay. We looked at the fact that cyber attack often aim to compromise one or more elements of the CIA triad, that is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And I gave an assignment about this, and I would say I'm impressed with the response from the assignment and what most people submitted. It shows that we are learning, and it also shows that your learning is not limited to just what we discussed here. So please take note of that, pay very close attention. You should be able to look at, okay, this particular attack, what element of the CIA triad was affected in this particular attack. Sometimes it could be two, sometimes it could be three. So it's important to take note of that. Yeah, then we'll look at framework for mitigation. Like I said, I believe you already have this material. What I really want us to do is maybe to just ask a question, then pay attention to security by design. This is very important. Remember, when I talk about security by design, most people look at software design or IT system design, even administrative system design. You need to factor security into it by practicing the principles of security by design. Then we look at emerging cyber threats, especially in this world of AI. The cyber criminals have taken advantage of AI. As a cybersecurity professional, you cannot just be sleeping. You too need to use AI to mitigate those attacks and mitigate those risks. And I gave an example that gone are those days when they would tell us, when we started, that's what we learned, that phishing email, one of the ways you identify phishing email is grammatical error. Today, phishing emails are even almost as good as your normal email, even better safe. Why? Because of AI. AI is being employed, or AI is being used to write malicious phishing emails. And they come with very good English, convincing that if you are still using the old practice of check out for grammatical error, That's part of what we learned when we started. Check out for grammatical error. AI will take away all the grammatical error, so you won't see any grammatical error. It's important to take note of that. Then we look at quantum computing, especially in the aspect of encryption and decryption. With quantum computing, there are some encryption that can be decrypted without the person even having access to your decryption keys. So it's important to take note. We talk about deep fake. Deep fake, when you have a video saying something that the person in the video is not really saying. And you say, yes, he said it. Look at it. But you don't know that it's actually deep fake. And they have used it to swindle quite a number of persons. Then we have the Internet of Things vulnerabilities. That's important to take notes. IoT are really very vulnerable because most of the time they don't pay attention to updates. Pay attention to updates, probably, and except they start looking into automating updates of IoT. It's something I think I need to also find out. Because if, for instance, you have your IoT somewhere probably you have an IoT that is used to monitor weather, and the IoT is somewhere on the field or somewhere in a stream, except you initiate the process of auto updates or auto patching, just go out, the IoT will just develop vulnerabilities, and it's connected to the internet. The bad guys can reach it, and they will send you fake data. And you see the data coming from the IoT, but it's not really what the IoT generated. It's important to take note of that. I think if we had had the time, I think I would have shared more of this instance with you. I remember speaking with a friend in the US. He had an IoT on under his skin. It has to do with health issues. He has, I think, diabetes or something like that. And the health is in such a way that once his blood sugar drop, the hospital would know. And if he pays attention to his device will also tell him. So he does not need to keep doing tests. With the IoT device, the hospital just tell him, oh, you need to come, you need to pay attention to this. This has been observed. I know some very religious person will say the end of the world. But you have to take advantage of available technology, really. So that's very critical and important to take note of. Okay, I will want to go ahead and quickly look at the module 4. Let me stop sharing this. I want to go ahead to look at the module 4. Let me share the module 4 with us. Yeah, window. So in the module 4, we talked about frameworks and standard. Let me say this to us, and I know I mentioned it in this module 4. There were, even though it was labeled Introduction to Cybersecurity Framework and Standard, but if you can take what we shared in this module 4 and go and sit on it, I tell you, add up your knowledge, your little knowledge of networking, add up your little knowledge of cloud computing. Then there's not even one other part I was going to make mention of. Just little of these things. I tell you, you could actually start providing cybersecurity services, especially in the aspect of frameworks and standard. So it's just important to take note of this facts. Yeah. Now we looked at frameworks and standard. We looked at example of framework and standard. We looked at specific example of a framework and 2 example of standard. We'll rush through that very fast. For framework, remember framework are optional. If you are told to differentiate between cybersecurity framework and cybersecurity standard, framework are optional, standard are required. Standard deals with regulation. Sometimes for standard, you could even get certification for it. But framework is just to guide you. Even though there are sometimes some organization will tell you that, oh, before we can do business with you, we need to be sure that you are using this particular NIST CSF. So not that it's important globally, but sometimes it's just to improve best practice. And remember, one of the benefits of this NIST framework, I will just want to go there straight, is for the NIST framework, it helps organizations to speak the same language, It helps organizations to speak the same language so that at the end of the day, both internal and external stakeholder, you are communicating with the same language, communicating with the same language. So it's important to take note. So we looked at the NIST cybersecurity framework, and under the NIST cybersecurity framework, we looked at 5 elements. We have the identify. You identify a lot of things. You identify the critical components, identify critical process and asset. You should be able to answer the question that what are the activities that must continue in order for us to remain in business? Some, it might be our website must always be open. Some, it might be this particular thing must be on ground. These are to identify critical process and assets. So as a cybersecurity person, part of auditing that cybersecurity audit that you do is to identify critical assets and critical process and assets. Important to take note, to look at documentation, inflow, type of information collected, and where they are used or where they are stored. Then we talked about maintaining hardware inventory, talked about policies, and we talked about identifying vulnerability and threats. Then we look at the protect elements of the framework of the NIST CSF, NIST cybersecurity framework. Remember, we've also shared this, so I will not get into details. We just want to do a brief overview, then probably if there are questions. And under protect, you need to train users. That's very critical. You train users, you need to manage access to the assets, you need to protect sensitive data, and also conduct regular backup. Let me see how many of us can remember, because it's not in the outline what I'm going to ask. What did I refer to as one of the best model for one of the best backup models? Can anybody remember? One of the best backup models, or an example of one of the best backup systems. Can anybody remember? Anybody? Okay. I mentioned a gap, air gapping. When you air gap, sorry, where is this? Okay. When you use an air gap backup system, an air gap backup system means air gap means there is a gap. It's not online. It's not an online backup system. You back up the system offline. That's air gapping backup system for your data. So it's very important. It's one of the safest and one of the most functional. It's important to take note. Then we talked about managing device vulnerability. Yeah. Then we look at the detect element of the framework. Where you actually have to do a lot of monitors. You have to monitor the logs. And remember, I said you could use tools to monitor the log. Then we have the R elements of the NIST framework. We have the R elements, and that has to do with respond. You have to have a response plan. That's very, very critical. Most of the time, this is handled by the IHAR team, that is incident response team. But you need to take note of that. Then we have the recover elements. For the recover, look at communicate with internal and external stakeholder. You can't keep quiet. You must communicate. That's critical. Okay. Now for the standard, we look at the PCI DSS. Remember, anybody that handles, collects information about data, handle payment card, they have to pay attention to PCI DSS standard. Very critical. Then we look at the GDPR, that is the General Data Protection Regulation. That's also very critical. This is a standard. We have the Nigerian version, which is the NDPR, as the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation. Very critical. Then we were able to compare GDPR and NDPR. This is very important. You have it. It's in our group page already. And we look at some concluding thoughts. So, like I said, this is just meant for revision. I want to leave the remaining minutes we have for question, or you want to add up, because one way to learn is actually to talk about what you learn. So in case you want to add up, you could open up the mic, or you want to ask questions. Please go ahead. Any question? Any question? Any question? Okay, maybe what I would. Okay, you could also type in case you can't release your mic to talk. You can also type. Any question? Any question? Any question? Any question? Any question? Okay, I want to believe we have learned some things and also we'll keep learning. I want to encourage every one of us to please be very open. Remember, like I said, your actual learning starts after you leave this room. Your learning starts after you leave this room. So please take hold of this material. Like I said, I will seek permission of the person that handled the first two sessions if she would want to release the materials for you to have. But I also think the recordings have also been shared. I think the recording has been shared too. So I would say thank you very much for taking out time to invest in your education, for taking out time to add value to yourself. Thank you very much for the desire that you have to also increase the security of our cyberspace. Whether we like it or not, we are all going to benefit from it. Okay, Williams, I saw your hands up. You want to ask a question, Williams? Probably you can unmute and ask.
Yes, I wanted to ask, what um aspect of the CIA triad does hardwares? What aspect they exploit? I wasn't sure of that.
Okay, the CIA triad, hardware. Let's think through it together. What is the purpose? What's the purpose for the hardware attack? What do you think is the purpose for hardware attack?
To bomb like victims with targeted ads or unsolicited ads, numerous
Okay.
unsolicited ads.
Okay. And what do you think? Remember, I gave an example, and this could also apply to hardware. I gave an example that a particular attack is not the end to itself. It's a means to an end. The
Yes.
spyware, the spyware is not the end to itself, it's a means to an end. So hardware might not be the end to itself, it actually might be a means to an end. Then, well, sometimes they could disturb your browsing experience. Hardware sometimes could disturb your browsing experience, and as a result, there is a dimension of availability that has been affected. Although not from the side of the person providing the resources for you online, but from the side of you assessing it. So they get so much disturbing message that it hampers your browsing experience. Praise, do you want to add to that or you have a separate question? Praise, I see your screen name as Praise. Do you want to add to that or you have a separate question?
Good evening. I have a separate question, but it's not. I have a.
Okay, so let me just conclude this then. You can come up with your question. So for what William raised, really we would say to some extent it affects availability, but at the end of the day, it might be much more than the hard, much more than the hard. As a matter of fact, the hard or the advert could actually be a malicious link eventually. Can get that now. So once you click on the malicious link, the next level of attack is rolled in. So that may not be the real attack. It might just be a means to reach an end. That's just what I think. Okay. Okay, Praise, you can go ahead. Praise, you can go ahead, please. Hello,
Hello, good
Praise.
evening.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
don't know if I'm audible. My network is quite.
Oh, sorry about that. You can go ahead now.
All right. the question I have is not really, it's kind of related to the class, but then I wanted to know if there was going to be a correction to the assignments that we had, the both assignments that we submitted last two classes.
Okay. Would make out time to discuss that. Really, like I said, I think we had about 10 submissions and people approach it in different ways. But what I just saw with the submission that was made is there is no wrong or there is no right answer. Everybody answered it from their own perspective. The most important thing I was looking out for is if you were able to comprehend and understand those cybersecurity principles and display them in your answer. And I see that took place a lot. But since someone is requesting that, we would look for a way to review that together. Okay. Okay, thank you. Praise, you still have your hands up. You want to say something more? Okay. In the absence of any other person, you want to ask question, you want to seek clarification, want us to throw more light on some of the things we've discussed, could you please go ahead? Okay. I would say the sense of any other. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anybody coming up? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Well done, sir.
Mr. Atudagola, you want to ask a question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And
Go ahead, please.
okay, sir. I think one of the ways that we can guide against malware, according to what you say, is using good antivirus.
Virus.
Now, yes, now, can we say can we say perfect antivirus in this sense? Because I discovered that all these antivirus, although we have different types, but there's still need for they have different functions, which we need to activate maybe regularly. Can we say that with all these antivirus, can we have perfect security of our system?
I would not even waste time to answer that. The answer is no. You can't have a perfect security of your system. You just make sure that you need to do the basic thing you have to do. You can't have a perfect security situation of your system. That's why sometimes some actually recommend to use 2 antivirus, but even much more than that, you need to also put in some other security measures in place. You need to put some other security measures in place, like apart from the updates of your antivirus software itself, the update of your operating system itself is very important. If you have a good antivirus in place and your operating system is not properly updated, in fact, some people, just because of not updating their operating system properly, they have the rootkit attack. They experience the rootkit attack, which the attacker gain an administrator level access on their system. So it's just important. It's a whole package which only an antivirus will not offer you. An antivirus is just one of those things that you can do, but you need to also pay attention to other cybersecurity principles and procedures. Very critical. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. So once again, I appreciate you all. We will be bringing this to a close. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this. I want to encourage you, keep learning, keep exposing yourself, keep interacting, and have a good evening. Take care of yourself and bye-bye.